1 second, I'm just pulling up the slides so everybody will be able to see the slides rather than seeing me. All right, so hopefully everybody can see the slides there. And this is our introduction to nutrition over the first 1,000 days of the lifespan. So when we're talking about nutrition over the first 1,000 days, this is the period of development from conception to age 2. So there's been a lot of research to show how vital and important this time period is for the growing fetus and for the developing baby as well. So we know that how well or how poorly mothers and children are nourished and cared for during this time has a profound impact on a child's ability to grow, learn and thrive. So we thought it was a really important topic that we wanted to obviously discuss, and especially for parents to be aware of that, you know, when we're looking at nutrition, when it comes to, you know, taking care of our children, it actually starts right from the fetal development. The first 1,000 days, why are we concerned about nutrition in the first 1,000 days? Well, it's when the child's brain begins to grow and develop, and when their foundations for their lifelong health are built. So as we're saying, this starts right from the beginning of conception, and it really also depends largely on the mother's nutrition as well. So as I've mentioned, nutrition is a particularly important foundational role in a child's development. We know that poor nutrition in the first 1,000 days can cause irreversible damage to a child's growing brain, and this can obviously affect their ability in school and affect their learning moving forward as well. Research shows that it can also set the stage for later obesity as well. Not only that, does it increase the risk of other chronic diseases such as diabetes, which can lead to long-term health problems too. Studies have also shown that countries that fail to invest in the well-being of women and children in the first 1,000 days can lose billions of dollars to lower economic productivity and higher healthcare costs. So it's something that we're really trying to put a wider message across there as an important factor that we all need to be supporting mothers and fathers obviously through this time as well. And it all starts with education. So good nutrition in the first 1,000 days provides the building blocks for a healthy brain development. So that's kind of our key focus in these early years. And nutrition has a huge role to play with the growing brain. So the first 1,000 days, we see that the brain grows more quickly than at any other time in a person's life. Nutrition provides obviously the fuel that drives most of this brain growth and development. And beginning early in pregnancy and throughout early childhood, nutrition provides the building blocks not only for cognitive abilities, but for motor skill development and social development as well. So it has a huge role to play in terms of the mental health and how we deal in social environments too. So what I'm going to talk through is we're going to break it up. We'll talk through the pregnancy nutrition, we'll talk through infancy nutrition, and then we'll talk through the early learning and early development toddler stage of nutrition as well. So when we look at pregnancy nutrition, I guess it might not be news to everybody, but we've obviously already, people are quite aware that we want to start enhancing mother's nutritional intake, especially with things like folic acid, you know, months before conception even takes place. We're seeing that nutrition is a vital time with brain development even before birth. So a child's brain grows very quickly. This was an interesting fact that I just learnt the other day, and I thought it was really interesting to note that just by the 4th week of pregnancy, the brain already has about 10,000 cells, and by the 24th week it contains 10 billion. So that just shows how many cells are being produced in such a short period of time, and obviously how essential nutrition is to helping those cells actually function and grow to the best ability that they can. Sorry, I just had to add some more people in that have just arrived. 1 second. Sorry, I'll just go back to that. So the nutrition that a baby gets from its mother through her diet is the fuel that drives much of the transformation of the brain in pregnancy. So some of the key essential nutrients that we're looking at are things like folic acid, iron, zinc, iodine, protein, and fatty acids as well. So these nutrients are vital in building the baby's brain during pregnancy. So we're kind of encouraging that not only do mums push and stress a lot about folic acid, but we've got additional essential nutrients that we need to really be focusing on getting adequacy through the diet, and if not through the diet, then supplementing where possible as well. So when one or more of these nutrients are absent during pregnancy, a child could be at risk of developmental delays, birth defects, and also cognitive defects as well. So during pregnancy, the following factors have a strong effect on a child's future health. So as I've mentioned, we're concerned about the mother's diet, so primarily what she's eating from a nutrition perspective. Also the weight at which the mother gains weight during her pregnancy. We do also, I won't touch on it today, but we do also have recommended guidelines around weight gain around pregnancy as well. The mother's physical and mental well-being, and there's a lot of research to show that the hormonal influences of the mother have a huge impact on the fetus in utero as well, and starts to also impact on the synapses of the brain from those early standpoints as well. The mother's environment and her lifestyle habits are all key essential parts of the brain development as well. So all of these factors listed above, we can see the research shows have an impact on not only the infant's metabolism, also on their immune system and how their organs function as well. There's also research to show that babies start to develop their food preferences in the womb as well. So it does have implications for lifelong eating habits too. So it's something else that we want all mothers to be aware of, is that their food choices during pregnancy will start to develop food preferences with their babies as well moving forward. So we kind of don't want to have that approach of, some people have the mindset of, well, I'm pregnant, I can kind of take this time to eat what I want. It's also making sure that within that, we're still making sure that we're maintaining adequate nutrition and we're having a healthy, balanced diet. So as I mentioned, the well-being of the mother are intertwined right from the start. And so we really need to start educating mothers around healthy eating well before pregnancy even takes place. We've seen that poverty and food insecurity during pregnancy can not only harm the health of the mother, but also of her baby as well. So it has real repercussions in terms of that growth of the fetus. Stress associated with these conditions also can negatively impact on the baby's development. And like I mentioned, elevated levels of stress hormones in utero can lead to long-term negative outcomes for children, such as cognitive delays, attention disorders, trouble in school, and emotional problems as well. So it's also trying to help the mother and her mental health in those early days of pregnancy, which is so vital as well. And that often stems from nutrition as well. As we know, nutrition is such a key important role in our hormone production. And when we look into the research around gut health and how important having an adequate gut health has in terms of how we manage stressful situations, anxiety and depression, it's a really interesting avenue to start investing a bit more time learning about. So I'm going to switch over into infancy nutrition as well. So we'll talk about so this is once baby's born, and the nutritional impacts and the key nutrients that we kind of want to focus on. A lot of the research still very much promotes breastfeeding as the main fuel source and the main nutritional source, obviously, at this stage. So when it comes to brain development, we see that breast milk is really the superfood. It's a time of, again, where we see a lot of brain development and growth happening as well in the infancy stage. And the baby obviously is learning how to interact and communicate with the world around us. So the nutrition is really fuel for them in that time as well. And again, if we link in with, the gut health, we see that breast milk has such a huge important role to play in helping with the gut microbiome as well. So breast milk is the perfect nutrition for brain development. It contains a variety of nutrients and proteins, as well as growth factors and hormones that unfortunately we just can't replicate in infant formula. And it's vital to the baby's brain development. So there's a lot of studies out there that show that babies who are breastfed perform better in intelligence tests and have higher IQs as children and teens. And obviously that's all linking in with, we see that nurturing interaction happening with breastfeeding, that social skills that starts to develop as well, sensory, emotional connections that start to build just through that touch of breastfeeding as well. I know that obviously it's quite hard for some mums to breastfeed. At this stage at the moment, we're just looking at the evidence and the research, and in terms of helping to enhance the baby's brain development and their social development and their gut health and their immunity. Unfortunately, breast milk is still, the gold standard out there. We just can't mimic it. Formula obviously is a great alternative for mums that can't breastfeed, but what we're really seeing in the research is that we need to be supporting mums, and there needs to be a lot more support for mums out there to obviously help move through their struggles with breastfeeding if they're finding it's an issue as well. So like I mentioned, breast milk helps to not only build brain cells, but also is so important for immunity and for the baby's health. It's got loads of antibodies that we just can't mimic through infant formula. It contains stem cells, and it obviously can have that act as it's the first vaccine for that child as well. It can also, it's been proven to help reduce sudden infant death syndrome as well. So we see that babies that are breastfed exclusively, there are significant lower rates in SIDS as well. And then also managing diseases such as pneumonia and diarrhea. So the World Health Organization recommends that we do exclusively breastfeed for 6 months. That's the ideal recommended time, and ideally no other solids or liquids until that time. And then we ideally want to continue breastfeeding up until 24 months. And this is what provides the best adequate nutrition that we can for our babies to grow and develop. Like I said, I know it's not always achievable, but we really want to start providing this information so mums can be really educated and so they can make the best decision for them based on the information that they know. All right, so we're stepping into early childhood nutrition. So this is now looking into, from 1 to 2 years of age. And we can see that this is, again, a really vital time for nutrition to be a key role in the growth of our children, not only for brain development, but also food preferences as well. So from 2 years of age, children start to develop their preferences for food, and they start to learn, their culinary processes right from that early stage as well. So we need to be implementing role modelling early at this time too. So they need a lot of nutrition for their brains, for their learning at this time. As a baby transitions into a toddler, their brain continues to develop at a really rapid pace. So the brain grows. So when a baby's brain is a newborn, it's only about the quarter of size of an adult. It grows to about 80% by age 3, and it reaches 90% of an adult brain size by age 5. So if we think about that amount of brain matter that's turning over and growing and developing in those early stages, nutrition is so vital to help with developing the best synapses and obviously the best brain tissue that we can. The brain is busy forming connections that allow the brain cells to communicate with one another, and the connections also include language areas as well. And so when we look at the key nutrients, iron really is an important one, and that is obviously something that we also need to be mindful of with children in the early stage. Is often we find that some of the foods that we are feeding children especially when they're transitioning onto solids, can be quite low in iron. So we do need iron to be quite a focus. Zinc, protein, vitamin A, B6, B12, and obviously essential fatty acids. And that's where we have that recommendation of full fat dairy up until 2 years of age, just to help with that brain development as well. So toddlers do need meat, and they do need other iron-rich foods. We've seen that iron deficiency can also impair learning ability, and iron deficiency can also cause a lot of behavioural issues as well. So there is a lot of evidence and research showing that children that do suffer from defiant behaviour, things like ADHD, tend to also have high risk or have had a history of iron deficiency as well. So there's a lot of research coming out in terms of the importance of adequate iron in the early years to also help with behavioural development too. So, early childhood is a great window of opportunity to shape lifelong health. As I said, it's where children start to establish their eating habits, is basically from 1 to 2 is where that all starts. And to fuel their growth, older infants and toddlers need a variety of foods. So we're looking at protein-rich food. So protein is so essential. A variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, milk and other dairy products as well. So over the past several years, there's been a dramatic increase in the number of preschool age children with overweight and obesity. It's an emerging epidemic driven by unhealthy diets and poor eating habits. And we're seeing that this is obviously the first 1,000 days has a vital role to play in that as well, whether they were breastfed or not, and also obviously their nutrition that they received in the early days as well. So what do we need to focus on? So variety of taste and textures is so important. We're seeing a lot of children growing up, fussy eaters as well. And if you do suffer or you have a really fussy eater, I would suggest to obviously make time out to go and see somebody who specialises in the area of fussy eating, whether it might be a psychologist or a dietitian, to get some really good key strategies on board to help in the early stages. Because if you're identifying that your children are fussy right at that first initial, 1 to 2 years, that's when we need to be acting before those habits become quite cemented in their food preferences. So, kids don't come out of the womb asking for chocolate cake. I say this to parents all the time. They don't come out saying, I want tomato sauce on everything that I eat. It's the taste preferences are established from the moment they obviously are exposed to these foods. So the longer we can prolong that exposure, it is going to help minimize the risk of having a child who is quite difficult with their taste or quite fussy with textures as well. So generally toddlers tend to cement their palate by about age 3. So the first, kind of when we start to introduce solids from 6 months up to 3 years of age, it's so important for us to be thinking about what foods are we actually introducing them to, and also a variety of foods as well. It can take sometimes up to 12 times for a baby or for a toddler to be exposed to a new food before they actually even want to taste it or adjust to the flavour. So it's really important for parents, if you give your child a tomato and they spit it out and they say, yuck, I don't like it, that we still keep trying with that, every time you have tomato, even if it's just half a cherry tomato, we still keep putting it on the plate and encouraging them to give it a go and try and see if eventually they end up adapting to that flavour. So the more flavours that we're exposing our babies and our children to early on, we do see that the less likely that they're going to turn out to be picky eaters down the road. But when we talk about flavours, we want to talk more about natural flavours. So minimising things like salt and sugar and really high, rich, fatty foods, because that's then they're going to develop that kind of acquired flavour for those foods. We just want to go down the line of the most natural, healthy, home-cooked, unprocessed foods as possible. So there is a range of foods that we want to try and obviously avoid. And, things like processed meat, extra salt. So our taste buds when we're born are so heightened. It's a bit different to an adult. We may potentially find we need salt on our salmon, but for children, their taste buds are so refined that if we keep giving them salt on their salmon, they're going to continue to want to have more. They don't need that overwhelming flavour as well. So things as well like fruit juices, high sugary foods, we really want to try and minimise as much as we can, because like we said, we are seeing an increased rate of obesity right from the early years. And often, like I said, then children tend to hold on to those food preferences, and it's really hard as they get older to change those. And obviously to be sure of reading food labels carefully as well. So just because something's in the health food aisle doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy and it's low in sugar or it's low in salt. It's really important to get your head around reading food labels, turning the packaging over and actually looking at the back of the packet to let you know whether that food is a healthy option or not. So what are the take-home messages? So Not all the changes that occur within the first 1,000 days are permanent. So if you're kind of listening in and you're going, oh my gosh, I've already, I didn't think about pregnancy nutrition, I didn't manage to breastfeed, whatever it might possibly be, they're not permanent changes. We're just looking at, these are the best things that we can do to help enhance our children's growth and help enhance their brain growth and their functionality right from the get-go. But as we know, the brain is very the plasticity of the brain it can change all the way up until adulthood. So it just takes a little bit of extra work. The science does show that it's better to kind of focus on this right from the get-go, because it does make it a lot harder down the track to obviously try and influence with therapy and change to help the brain then catch up. So the young brain is enormously plastic, and it can recover from early insults, with a bit of improvement. So it's never too late. But obviously, we just want to focus on the best window of opportunity is right from pregnancy up until 2 years of age is the key nutritional window to help enhance the best growth that we can for our children. So the nutrition that your baby receives in the first 1,000 days of life can have a huge positive influence on how they develop, how they grow, and how they learn. So not just now, but also for the whole life leading forward and establishing healthy eating habits moving into the future. So that's kind of our quick summary on the first 1,000 days. Like I said, today is quite short and sweet. If you're still unsure about what your children should be eating, and you're kind of wanting to delve more into, okay, I've got a 3-year-old, what should they be having? We do have a great workshop coming up, again, supported by the Coburn Healthy Lifestyle Program. This is a face-to-face workshop. It's on the 14th of November at 9:45 at the Yangebutt Family Centre. You do have to register because places are limited. So there's the email address there, and it is $5 per person to attend. And in that workshop, we will go through a lot more specifically about, okay, well, what specifically should I be feeding my children as a guide? But like I said, today was just more of an introduction about how important it is that we focus on nutrition on the first 1,000 days. So I'm going to open up the platform to any questions. Like I said, if you wanted to ask a question, you will have to unmute yourself so I can hear you. Otherwise, feel free to please write in the chat, and then I can obviously answer any questions that you may have.